that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for reservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for reservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And hello, pop pickers. Welcome to the 86th. I've checked out this time, Paul. I didn't have to ask you. It's the 86th edition of Political Unmuted. I mean, what an amazing achievement, everybody. Thanks to the team, who have all seen many, if not most of them. Their loyalty to the show is just so appreciated. But also, as people begin to log in, hello to you listeners. And I do know that you too are loyal to the show. And many of you listen because you want the thing to succeed, and you contribute positively to the chat because you want it to be a good show. You are so appreciated. Hello, everybody. And welcome to the fabulous team. Paul Daly, hello.
Hello.
Jane Strange, welcome. Hello.
Hello.
And what's Ruby? Is it Ruby?
Rosa.
Rosa, welcome to Rosa. Ruby's my granddaughter's dog. I'll send you an injection of something for next week. Welcome to Rosa and welcome to Laura. Hiya, God bless you. Thank you so much, everybody. And let's move straight on. Just very briefly before I let the others talk, I'm going to sort of steal in and tell you my own moment of the week. And I was upset that we didn't choose the Jubilee to discuss this week. You didn't want to discuss it, and that's fine. But I had the most fabulous quote. And Laura Pitcock's got her head in the hands for sort of saying, how can anybody be so stupid as to support the Jubilee? And the truth of the matter is that she's being accused of being patronising to the people who do support the Jubilee. That's absolutely a discussion I'm not going to take part in. But we can and it is valid to look at the comments of people outside Britain about what we're doing. And this is a comment from Ireland, which says that the royal family is, quote, basically a Rorschach test that the tabloids hold up in order to gauge what level of hysterical batshittery their readers are capable of at any moment in time. I just thought, that has got to be one of the quotes of the century. Paul, what was your moment of the week?
I kind of want to comment on that, but I'm going to go with Davos. So Davos happened this week. And basically, it's been roundly ignored, and it's basically just a load of rich people locking themselves in a chamber and breaking wind and telling everyone how great it smells. That is basically what they are doing. So
that has got to go, Laura. When you're doing the little quotes and putting them on YouTube, that has got to go in as a 2-second. Sorry,
yeah, they're just sitting in there and they're going, smell that. That's great. So what they do is they tell everyone about how they should live their lives. They've talked about like what should happen in Ukraine. They've talked about what should happen with climate change, even though they've all flown in on private jets. They've decided to invest heavily heavily. £500 million they've all decided to invest in carbon capture technology, which has actually been shown that it's a really bad plan, because there's only certain industries that can't help but put out carbon. So concrete, for example, you can't help but put out some, so you need some. But I think they're just doing it as we can continue polluting the atmosphere as much as we can, because we're going to have this magical technology that'll pull carbon out of the air. And like the guys who've made a load of money out of coronavirus were there, like Pfizer and stuff, and Jeff Bezos was there complaining about how they shouldn't have high taxes, because Biden started talking about higher taxes on billionaires. But there were a few people at Davos asking to be taxed more, which was kind of interesting. But generally, no. There's the Zambians were there. There's the Zambian president was there saying about how important it was to reduce his level of corporation tax, even though his people are suffering and they've got this massive mineral wealth. So, yeah, as I say, it's just a load of people who are causing some really bad smells and going, I like what we're up to.
It was interesting that millionaires were amongst the people who were saying that millionaires need to be taxed more, which joined with the crowds outside. But it is surely the highest level of hypocrisy that the wealthiest people, in order to demonstrate how they understand the needs of an ordinary world, should choose to go to these very, very posh resorts, way out of everybody else's league, for their meeting. Horrific. Thank you very much for your moment of the week. Jane, what was your moment of the week?
So this week I've just been getting angry about education. So I read this week that universities have been asked to apply if they want to keep doing teacher training after 2024. So the first round has just closed. Only 80 of the 216 applicants got through. So Nottingham, who I think is one of the Russell Group universities, and 2 months beforehand had an outstanding commendation from Ofsted, they didn't get through. Cambridge University didn't even bother to apply because they said they were too worried about the restrictions that might be put on what they were able to teach and how they were able to teach it. And the next round is going to assess the appropriateness of the syllabus and sources being used in the training. And this really frightens me. I mean, what are they doing to our education system? This is awful.
It makes you wonder what they're going to be teaching these teachers, how they have to teach and what they have to teach. I'm worried about it as well. Yes. Thank you very much for that. We do have people, we take our listeners' moments of the week. If you've got a moment of the week, please share your moment of the week. I noticed that somebody's put it on the restream. It would be interesting to know if you've noticed anything that we haven't. Laura, you've got a particularly interesting one, I do know.
Yes. This could take an entire show to unpick, but I'll just give you the headline. So basically, Plymouth, there's going to be a series of training events around basically coaching men to become active bystanders. This is in the wake of the murder of Bobby Ann McLeod from Plymouth, who was kidnapped at a bus stop and murdered. And essentially what it is, it's training that is going to take place in schools and businesses and sports clubs and social settings to basically teach men how to recognize misogyny and how to stand up to it, and not be just silent witnesses to it, and actually be an active participant or active bystander, as they put it, which I think is really interesting. I mean, it's really good to see an entire city willing to take something on that is this big, and I assume is going to be it's going to be quite a difficult conversation for them to have with a lot of their residents, because the Not All Men crew will come out in force. I'm pretty sure that again for me it's another stick and plaster over a gaping wound, but it's something. It is a good start. It is something that will get people thinking about behaviors and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And, you know, it is, we've talked about this a few times, and I know in particular, we've done a session with our local Labour Party, John, that you were present at, where we talked about this in detail, about how, at what point does it stop being appropriate? You know, there's this sort of whistling and catcalling, and then it sort of it continues on from this whole joke. Oh, it's just a joke, I'm just having a laugh with you. And then, but where's the line, you know? So if we can teach men and women as well, you know, we're all responsible for calling it out when we see it. But if we do teach men and boys to call it out when they see it, then hopefully that will then grow into a societal change. So well done to Plymouth, and I'm sure there'll be a billion comments about how this is, you know, not enough or whatever, but it's something, and at least someone's taking this seriously and doing something to tackle it. So yeah, let's see how it works in Plymouth. Let's hope it works really well, and let's just roll this out across the entire country.
Spot on. I agree with you. That in regards to what you were saying earlier, if it needs to be pointed out that it's a joke, then it's already crossed that line. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I do feel that there's an awful lot of people who sit there and see things going on, but they don't feel able to intervene. They don't want to. They're scared to intervene. And they just sit there and watch these things happening, and sort of helping people know when and how to make a statement or say something or stop something. I think that's really, really smashing, and well done. Mark Lungley's moment of the week is that he's got an insulin pump. Fabulous, well done, and I'm glad that it's making a difference to your life, and so it should. I can't see any others. Can anybody see any others moments of the week?
Ruth's moment of the week is related to Laura, actually.
Really? I've totally missed that.
Group banners being shown in the Baltic.
Oh my God, I can't believe that wasn't my moment of the week. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so both of my banners from the Women's Banner Group, not my banners, this collective, our banners, are up as part of an artistic display in the Baltic in Newcastle. They're going to be there for a while, except for Gala Week. Obviously, the weekend of the Durham Miners Gala, they're not going to be there, but they'll go straight back up. It's part of a really beautiful exhibition, actually. I would suggest you go and see it. It's free. It's really beautiful. It's a lady from Colombia. I was lucky enough to meet her when I went the other day to have a look, see what it was all about. I was really shocked when I went to see how much of a big deal it was. I thought we were just going to have some banners up and it'd be pretty, but it is absolutely gorgeous and really heartfelt. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Go to the Baltic and have a look at it. It is a beautiful exhibition and we're really proud to be part of it. So sorry I totally had two moments of the week there, but thanks, Ruth.
Thank you for your second moment of the week. Just one thing before we move on. Has anybody heard how Durham did in the City of Culture? Have we had a result yet? Pardon?
Bradford won.
Bradford got it? Oh, it's my hometown is Bradford. Hardlines, Durham, sorry. Right, Paul.
Now it's time for the big story.
Now, the big story is this. A tweet by Planet Beth. So yesterday, I learned that the Tories have snuck in that if you fail maths or English GCSE even once, you are no longer eligible for student loan and can only make it through uni if self-funded. It caused a bit of a stir on social media. Southern local social media did this. It refers to the government's proposals for their response to the Uyghur report on higher education. And one of the people it got very upset was Jane. So I'm just going to pass over to you, Jane. And a rant, I think, is in order, is it not?
Thank you. Very easy to get angry with this government. So they've done this review back in 2016. They looked at it, and then they've reviewed what they want to pick out from it. So it suggested that they cut tuition fees. They decided they wouldn't do that. There's some less nice things, like repayment of tuition fees over longer periods, so people pay more. They've decided they will keep that bit. And along with that, they've decided that they're going to look into whether they should withhold access to student loans from people who don't pass their maths and English GCSE. So they opened a public consultation in February, and it closed at the beginning of May. And I'm really angry that I didn't know about it until now, because I just felt such a burning sense of injustice when I saw this. This can't be allowed to happen. So it isn't happening at this stage, but the government is seriously considering doing it. They've taken the results of this consultation that, from what I can tell, not many people knew happened. And I'm very worried, along with the other measures they're taking, that they may well implement it. I just want to say, as someone with GCSEs, A-levels, a degree and a professional qualification, most of the most intelligent and nicest people that I know or have met in my life left school without GCSEs. And I just can't believe that we're even considering taking away the opportunity from people. This apparently, according to an Institute of Physical Studies, they did a study of 2011 to 2012, I think it was, school intake students, and they said 40% of them wouldn't have been eligible for the student loans under this. 40% of students at school would not have had the option to go to university. So they justified it by saying that only 9% of those did go, but everyone should have the opportunity. It's just wrong. So 1 in 4 pupils who are eligible for school meals would be ineligible for student loans. I personally feel that education gives you opportunities in life. It may not give you as much opportunity as I'd like in this country at the moment, but to withhold that from people, it's undemocratic, and it just makes me so very sad that this could happen in this country.
So the first thing people need to understand is that when you're a teenager, when your brain grows, and the number of neurons that you're going to have, you've got them by year 3, quite frankly. The size of your brain isn't going to increase. But then what happens is that over the next 20 years, the brain lays down the connections between the neurons. And of course, that determines how well you can think. And when it stops laying down those connections, it continues to lay insulation around those connections, which may end up make them work faster. And sort of a teenager has only got 80% of the links in their brain of an adult. And so this flies in the face of just the fact of it, that if you're going to your brain has not stopped developing when you are 16. That's the key thing to understand. It continues developing and growing and increasing in speed and ability until you're 25. And sort of, if it's true, and I'm going to pick you up on this in a moment, Jane, but if it's true that if you fail English and maths at age 16, you won't be able to get a student loan, then that is the most stupid because some of the cleverest people in this country, it's because their brains have not yet grown fully, and they'll come into the ability to do these. And of course, the people who it hits most are going to be people from deprived backgrounds who haven't had the stimulus in early life, and whose brains then grow and develop more slowly over a longer period of time. And so it would directly hit the disadvantaged people. But I'm going to I haven't been able, just bringing that, I've deleted it, but bringing it up, it says, even if you just fail it once. Now, I didn't find any evidence for that whatsoever. And instead, what I found was just a thing that you have to have English and maths at GCSE level before you go on a university course. And I didn't find that half as frightening. I mean, you have to have all kinds of qualifications before you can go on any course. And sort of, do you not think, I mean, I'm going to quote Sophie Corcoran of Durham University, that if you can't pass basic English and maths, then uni's not for you. Is it not fair that is it not fair to say that when you go to university, you need a brain which is capable of getting English and maths at GCSE level?
This is something that makes me really angry. The suggestion that academic ability and achievement actually is a good indicator of ability and intelligence, because I personally feel that academic achievement is much more an indicator of opportunity in life often than it is capability. So obviously you need to be able to pass those exams, but if you're in poverty, if you're hungry, if you're caring for a loved one, if you've had to take on a job because your family needs financial support, if you've got dyslexia, if you're suffering from trauma, depression, anxiety for any number of reasons, or maybe you want to study art or history, but maths and English just aren't for you, it just makes me so angry to think that you might be written off and denied that opportunity. And I understand the IFS article I read said that they thought it would mean that people would retake their maths and English GCSE. So that did indicate that it wouldn't be a one chance thing. But if you're from a family that doesn't have money and wealth, taking an extra year or two to resit exams is not necessarily an option. You need to have money to live, and you need to have time to study if you're going to do well in those exams. And those two things aren't necessarily compatible if you don't have wealth behind you.
But I mean, is it not just, I mean, in the past, people who have wanted to go on a university course and haven't had English and maths, it has been customary for them to do an access course, which has given them a qualification in those areas equivalent to, and sort of surely it's the case that I absolutely agree with you that some of the cleverest and most wonderful people aren't academic, but I would suggest that a university course is an academic qualification. And sort of there sort of what the government was trying to do here was to encourage people to go on appropriate qualifications and ones that are more appropriate for them than a university course, which will end up with them sort of unable to get a job and saddled with a load of debt.
Is this just another societal problem that we don't actually have, that the government is trying to tackle so that we can just not notice the glaring inequalities in society caused by their economic policies? I don't think this is an issue. Why shouldn't people be allowed to study just for the sake of learning? In fact, if you look at a country like Germany, where it costs, a couple of €100 to enroll in a university course, and, people learn for pleasure. And why shouldn't they have that opportunity? Why should everything be focused on getting a job at the end of it?
So do you know what the total amount of student debt is in this country at the moment?
I don't know what it is, but I do believe it's all been sold off cheap to private companies. So they couldn't handle it well.
The level of student debt in this country is £161 billion. Now, this means that we have the students coming out and they are lumbered with £161 billion worth of debt. And I'm just putting the other side of the coin here, and sort of surely it's an argument that if university, like it was in my day, and I had all the benefits, I have no qualms about admitting this, like you got grants, there were massive grants for people to go to university. If you had a grant-aided system where basically university was more or less free, what you're saying is right, but a situation where people are taking on tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt, which they're going to carry and which is going to grow, and remember, if you can't pay it back, it still builds up the interest. It's going to grow over their lifetime to the point where they can never pay it back in some cases. Do you not think that it is wise that sort of rather than allowing our universities to just recruit willy-nilly, you might make people think very seriously about whether university is the correct route for them?
I personally would be changing that system as well. I don't agree with the student loans and the level of the tuition fees, to be honest. But are we saying people shouldn't be allowed to make that choice for themselves, and they need to be policed by the government to tell them, no, that's not a sensible decision. You'll live your life the way I'd like you to live it, because you don't come from a wealthy family, so you don't get that option.
And just to say, I mean, I'm in two minds about this one, because I do think that, I mean, you cannot let everybody go on every course. You have things that it's normal that it's sort of if you want to go and do A levels, you've got to get certain GCSEs in certain levels, and nobody calls this out as a dreadful system. That sort of if you want to get onto various university courses, they will offer you've got to get these qualifications in these GCSEs, these A levels, and then we'll let you onto our course. It's absolutely normal. And I don't necessarily think that's saying that to get on a academic university course, you've got to have English and Maths GCSE. I don't think that's a step which I would regard as being absolutely horrific.
It makes me so angry to even think about it. I just can't understand why you would say that.
Let's have a look and see what people are saying. Timothy Byton says that art needs every qualification an academic needs, and to say otherwise is to belittle them. Tim Dredge failed his maths O level, attended 4 different universities and got qualifications in all of them. Maths wasn't for me. That's a point. And he didn't have to do an access course. Thank you very much, Tim. Mark Lunley points out that in 6 years, the first year loans that aren't paid will be written off. Mia Mantri points out the issues facing neurodiverse persons, and that is an absolute valid point. And universities, I think they're bound to have systems which allow neurodiverse people to access them, just between you and me. Stuart Sutherland's degreeless. He says higher education is a luxury for many when post-graduation incomes don't reflect the value of the course time and the cost of jobs tax students' loans. Steve Bird left in 1974 with no GCSEs. He's been teaching maths for 26 years. Mark Lungley started A-levels without GCSE English. And Sunwing says, I won't bring an argument with Jane, I've tried. Jane, God bless you. Thank you very much for the point. Paul, Alistair Jarvis from the Universities UK called these proposals placing a cap on aspiration. Now, did you think that the sort of requiring people to get English and maths before they go on a university course, do you think that's a cap on aspiration?
I don't know what aspiration is in the context that people talk about it, to be honest. Like people are using the word aspiration. What we hear a lot is, like, we had people like Michael Gove and all the Conservative politicians always saying, what we need is people with more aspiration, and they talk about white working class boys having low aspiration. Personally, I've never had an issue with students not having aspiration. Everyone wants to do well, get a good job, have a good life, whatever. The problem is opportunity. That's the problem that they face. So aspiration is like, yeah, maybe it puts I don't really understand what they mean by aspiration, and I think we should stop using the term because everyone's got some kind of aspiration. The problem we've got is we've got a completely messed up education system anyway. Like, GCSE results are capped. They are zero sum. People don't realise this, like there are only a certain number of people who are going to pass every year. You could have a year group full of geniuses and still only a certain number of people would pass their GCSEs that year. So, we need to have a discussion. We need to have an understanding about, and what are they for? Like, I don't understand what GCSEs, I'm saying this as a teacher, I don't understand what GCSEs are for. if they're just to go to university. And what's university for? What are we doing? You know, like we're sending our best and brightest to work for Facebook and Google in order to try to optimize advertising to sell us stuff and to change our behaviors. They're not trying to solve problems of the world. They're not trying to do anything useful at all. You've got the brightest like biochemists and you know all these different like rocket scientists, people who should be doing something marvelous with their lives, wasting their time on trying to get corporations more money. So there's a wider argument around this. Also on student loans, like they invented student loans to try and pass off public debt as something else, and then they sold it to private people. The public will end up paying for it if people don't end up getting a job anyway, and or other people will pay over the odds for it. Like the people who get the loans will pay for it. There are so many arguments that come out of this that I always go big picture on this one. I think, you know, the disaster that is our education system at the moment needs to be really, really addressed, and we could go on about it for a very long time, I'm sure.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, I think student loans are an absolute evil, by the way. Laura, last question to you. Sir Peter Lampy, founder of the Sutton Trust Education Charity, said, universities are the key route to social mobility. What do you reckon to that statement?
Well, for starters, I think anybody called Sir shouldn't be talking about social mobility. Also, social mobility is such a fallacy. It works under the misconception that you need to have this aspiration to get to X, Y, and Z, where in actual fact, I think Jane's absolutely spot on. We should be looking at what is success, what is failure, what is being, you know, what is doing well in life. Does it need to be how many zeros you've got on your paycheck, you know, how many A's and A stars you get in your GCSEs? I'm showing me age there, it's not A's and A stars anymore. But it really bothers me as well. This whole thing really, really bothers me quite a lot, because I've never passed my maths GCSE. And I've done all right. I mean, much to Paul's dismay as a maths teacher, he could get me to my maths very, very quickly, I'm sure. But it's about why are we judging people by how many boxes they can tick, about how many tests they can pass? Because if most people in this country are the type of people who will retain knowledge until it comes out of the end of their pen for the exam, and then it'll disappear. Nobody needs it anymore. And I have a real problem with that being the way, the mark of success and the mark of intellect, because it's not at all. We have so many creative talents here, and that's being completely diminished because creativity now is not being fostered and it's not being developed. It is seen as something for rich people to do in their spare time, and I really struggle with that a lot. It makes me very, very angry, much like Jane has said tonight. So social mobility, it's a structure that is not okay. It's a structure that is flawed, and how do you class social mobility? Oh, you weren't very rich before, but now you're a billionaire. And it's no, the majority of people are not going to do that. The majority of people are not going to be CEOs of businesses, but that doesn't mean you can't be successful. You can be successful, and just, you know, to point on something that you mentioned, John, about how, you know, I get that you need to have maths and English and science and all of those to get to university. But it depends which university course you pick. I never passed maths, but I went to university and I've got a degree, albeit it wasn't in rocket science, because I would have probably needed maths for that. And you know, those opportunities shouldn't be taken away from people because they don't have the boxes that need to be ticked.
This has, God bless you all. Thank you for your comments. A very, very lively discussion, and God bless it. Sort of generally, we seem to be agreed that we don't agree that you ought to have English and maths before you can get a student loan. And sort of, I could spend the next 5 minutes just reading out some of these fantastic comments, and I just direct people's attention to them. Mia Mantri is making a number of comments. Mentions Rebecca Long Bailey. Totally reframed the word of aspiration in her leadership bid. Mark Lungley, somebody who writes academic papers on closed loop insulin systems, has no academic qualifications. Timothy Beaton, thank you so much for your comments. They've been so challenging. Social immobility, none. Culturally demotivating space, lined, impotent, complacent, degrading. You feel strongly about this as well. Well done. Thank you so much. I agree with Jonathan Logan. Mr. Gove did more damage than any other politicians to the education system. But we're going to have to move on. Thank you so much. Other questions? Paul, changes to the ministerial code. Boris is being accused of dumbing it down in order to save his own skin. True or false?
True. True. We've got this.
Hey, Jane. Sorry.
Oh, no,
I'm joking, Jane. I asked true or false. It was a close question. Paul said true, and I pretended I was moving on. Paul, carry on.
Orwellian's kind of overused, I think, but again, it's like Animal Farm when they just oh yeah, it's always been like this, like they change the rules and make it up as they go along, and it's incredibly frustrating. I think what they're trying to do is to try and bore us to death with their rule breaking and get us used to a thing. So if you just get people used to behaving in a certain way, it's gone. Trust in politicians was at an all-time low. I thought it couldn't get lower. But what it does is, I think it's the whole political class that has been put in the same light, like they think that all politicians are the same, everyone who's interested in politics is the same. To an extent, there's a lot of similarities across the political spectrum. There's a lot of ambition, there's a lot of people who simply are in politics for a career rather than to do good. And I think that's what we're seeing. They'll try and weasel the way out of absolutely anything. But the idea that they want to make the ministerial code less strong and make it not a resignation offence if you break it, it's the code was there to try to restore some faith in politicians, and this does the opposite of that. And I don't think they care. They really don't care. It is all about the individual. It's not about faith in politics. It's not about faith in politicians. It's not about faith in anything. It's about the individual. It's about that man wanting to get away with stuff and his ilk wanting to get away with stuff. He's gotten away with stuff his entire life. We were talking the other day at my school, and we were saying that Boris Johnson would be one of our students. I work in a school where people struggle with their behavioural needs and what have you. He would be one of them. He would be in them if he was poor, but he's rich, and he gets away with whatever he wants, and he's used to it, and now he can make the rules, and we've sort of allowed that, and we allowed a narrative to take hold where you had this nasty guy who obviously has spent far too much time in the allotment plotting to bring down our way of life or something like that. It's absolutely preposterous that people were taken in by a narrative that Jeremy Corbyn was somehow evil, and therefore we had to elect Boris Johnson to save us. It's utterly, utterly stupid. I think more and more people realise that. But it's way too late.
Thank you, Laura. Now, again, I'm going to put the other side of the coin. The number 10 says that it's disproportionate to expect that any breach, however minor, should lead automatically to resignation or dismissal. And that leaving it to the Prime Minister to decide, is this proportionate or not, will avoid incentives for trivial or vexatious complaints. Now, I mean, what do you make of that as a kind of a justification? I mean, sort of, and let's give it the time it deserves. Do you think that sort of we want a ministerial code of conduct that says if you do something wrong, you have to go, whatever it was?
Well, I think that particular statement that you've just read out was a very nice worded way. It's just a wordy way of saying we're going to do whatever we want and we make this work for our Prime Minister, who's the boss, and he's told us we have to do this, so let's make it sound good. And that is just how that smacks to me. It's absolutely pathetic. And no, I wouldn't ordinarily say that people should just immediately resign for doing something wrong. However, these people are meant to be elected representatives of the people of the entire of the UK. So especially, Boris Johnson is the leader of the country, whether you chose him or not. He is our leader, and he should be held accountable, as should his staff, as should the people in his party. That is just the way it is. I mean, yeah, normal officers, oh my God, if you worked in a normal office, you'd have been sacked already anyway for doing that. You absolutely would. So no, I don't. I find the whole thing absolutely ludicrous. I really do, and really upsetting, because they have not been held accountable for the things they've done, and they've managed to again swing the narrative to, oh, are we still just talking about a party? Oh my God, there's so much more things going on. There's a war, and there's this and there's that. There's always something else. There's always something more important to focus on. And and they've built it that way. They have the system, and by the system, I mean the media system, I mean the political system, absolutely everything working in their favor and they will, turn on a sixpence here. They will entirely change their view if it suits their purpose, and somehow manage to get everybody convinced that that is the right thing.
I absolutely agree with you. I can just very, very quickly, because we're running out of time. Boris Johnson rewrote the code, removing all references to honesty, integrity, transparency, accountability. People making a big deal of this, that those words were removed. But do you think it honestly matters that he removed them? Because they weren't there in practice, were they?
Well, exactly, and that's the problem, isn't it? They weren't there in practice. I think what this is absolute proof that Boris Johnson and his Conservative government will do whatever they want, whether it's written down or whether it isn't. It doesn't matter to them. This just gives them the opportunity to not have any accountability and not have anybody come back on them and say, well, actually, in your own statute, this is written. Doesn't matter because it's not there anymore. And actually, none of it matters, because they have proven time and time again that they'll just do what they want. And the fact that we're just sitting by and letting this happen shows that we will let them just sit and do whatever.
And the only answer is to vote them out. Thank you. And finally, I'm just going to go back, Jane, to Paul and Laura's comments that people have got bored with Partygate. One cabinet minister said he didn't believe the Gray report had changed people's minds. Either people are already bored of it or they're permanently enraged by it. Do you think that the Sue Gray report has changed people's attitudes towards Boris Johnson one way or the other?
I do think it's been a little bit damaging for him. I think he was a lot of people had a lot of doubts about him anyway, and the Sue Gray report has been the evidence that a lot of people who were trying to make excuses for him haven't been able to ignore. I do think people get worn down about hearing the same thing over and over again, but I think what we've got to hold on to is the fact that this isn't merely about the parties. This is about the dishonesty and corruption in government, and we don't want dishonesty and corruption in our government.
Do you think the fact that there were photos has had any effect? Do you think that the visual images have damaged him more than just the words in the past, or again?
I think so. I think they have, but I think the prevalence of that one picture for the party that he did get the fine for, that one being chosen, probably has given some people an opportunity to, tone down what he's done and say it wasn't so bad when really it was a lot worse than that picture shows. The 38 degrees picture that's been issued today, it's made up of photographs from other people's lockdowns.
Yes.
And it shows Boris Johnson. It makes a big picture of Boris Johnson. I really hope that picture gets as much publicity as the one of him toasting his leaving colleagues.
Thank you. Last question, Paul, just very shortly. Do you think that Boris is going to wriggle out of this by sending us back to pounds, ounces and pints?
I think the people who are pro Boris Johnson will probably like that kind of stupid thing again, and they're never going to change their mind. They just like silly things that don't matter, like we can talk about pounds and whatever in whatever way we want, all of us measure ourselves in different ways. Like I know what I weigh in stone, I know what I weigh in kilograms. Some people only know one or the other. That's absolutely fine. It doesn't really matter that much. It's still the same weight. It's just a different way of saying it. So some people will care about that. What makes me sad is the fact that, if this kind of thing, that's a bit of a desperate swing from him, but if the thing that brings him down is Partygate and is changing the ministerial code and those kind of things, if that's what brings him down, when you've seen the biggest transfer of wealth from the poorest to the richest, and you've got if we don't address that, then it won't change. And there's no narrative around that at the moment in the press about how awful this government has been, how awful it's been for poor people, how massive this energy crisis is, where we're going to be given money to energy companies through the medium of saying, there you go, there's some money to pay your bills for these people who are ripping you off. There are so many things wrong with this. Partygate is the least of my worries about Boris Johnson.
Well, I'm going to stop you there because we need to move on, but thank you so very much. And always, Paul, what you do is you draw our attention to the big picture away from little things like pounds, ounces and pints. God bless you. Jacqueline Hemmings, Boris Johnson reached the absolute bottom of trustworthiness and then he started digging. I thought as a corker of a comment, Jacqueline. And then when we're talking about number 10, justifying it and sort of saying, we shouldn't be resigning for minor things. Her comment is, minor? Wow. Talk about gaslighting. Again, Jacqueline, you're on top form tonight. God bless you for your comments, everybody. Last topic of the evening. We've only got 10 minutes for it, people. Laura, it's the release of the Chinese police files on the cost of Uyghur detention. Tell us all about what is the. Many people won't even know who the Uyghurs are. Just tell us about what's going on from the beginning.
Okay, well, I'll do my best. I'll do a potted history of it. So the Uyghurs are a Turkic ethnic group who live in independent East Turkestan. You probably won't have heard that name because actually the Chinese occupation, as they call it, have now called that Xinjiang. The UN thinks there are probably about 1 million Uyghurs in detention at the minute. Which means there are hundreds of detention centres up and down this particular border, and the Uyghurs have come out to say, this is genocide, crimes against humanity, A lot of them are saying that they have been raped, electrocuted, tortured. They've been sterilized against their will. But the Chinese government are saying that this is all propaganda. It simply isn't true. And in actual fact, these camps are job training centers to allow the Uyghurs to get rid of their extremism and to be part of Chinese society. It's really difficult. It's a very long history, and something certainly that we can't really cover fully in 10 minutes. I might be very cynical, but the area that the Uyghurs live in happens to be, it's the place that has the one of the biggest proportions of the world's cotton. It also has a lot of oil and a lot of gas. And I am probably cynical, as I say, but I feel like that may have something to do with the occupation there. They're basically saying, I mean, even the Uyghurs think it is because of their religion and their ethnicity, and they are basically being gotten rid of by the Chinese government. It's really sad, and it is really scary how under the radar this has gone. I mean, this has gone on for years as well. This isn't a new thing. This has been going on for a long time. And we're just now seeing it's really difficult to get into those camps or detention centers or prisons or whatever you want to call them. It's really difficult to get into. Nobody's ever seen any actual footage at all. Now this footage is starting to come to light. They've now allowed people to go in and film what they want them to see. So it, on the face of it, there's some footage being released of them celebrating their culture. It's all beautiful and all, you know, how we come together, and they're learning maths and English and languages and wonderful things, and it is about getting jobs. But actually the Uyghur people are saying that is all propaganda. That is not what it's like. That is not the experience that they're having. It's really scary. It is really terrifying, and you can draw comparisons. You can draw a lot of comparisons here, actually, whether that be the Palestinians or, you know, I mean, there are so many. Basically, these people think they're being oppressed, and there's a genocide going on. It is really scary to read. There's a lot of information out there. I would really encourage all of our viewers to go out and have a look at what's been happening there, because
just to interrupt you,
don't know about.
Laura. Sort of a woman called Michelle Bachelet sort of went there from the UN, and that was fairly much a disaster, wasn't it?
Yeah, in that it was a 6-day trip where she came out and sort of was like, well, actually, it doesn't really seem that bad, but I think they doctored that trip quite a lot, hadn't they? They'd shown her the best of it, and they'd shown the Uyghurs celebrating their culture and in classrooms, learning how to get jobs, learning how to be, you know, constructive members of society. In actual fact, that is not what the prisons look like. And I call them prisons because that's what the photographs look like.
That's what the photographs clearly showed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paul, what can we do about this? I mean, Laura's put her finger on the problem that it's all happening under the cloak of immense secrecy in a very tyrannical society. These people are just being quietly exterminated. I mean, what can we do as English individuals to address this issue?
I think it's extremely challenging for us as individuals to do anything at all here, because we're in a situation where they'll pass it off as a battle of ideologies. A lot of people say, "Oh, this is because they're communist or whatever." It's not because they're communist. It's because they're authoritarian, and we're authoritarian. You know, like we know that there's been legislation brought in recently to try and stop the re-education of gay people. You know, like but they've continued it on for trans people and so on. They haven't made conversion therapy illegal. These are authoritarian things people are doing to try to make people think in a different way. What I find is people on the ground, people in communities, and people who talk to one another are incredibly tolerant of one another. What isn't tolerant of one another is authoritarianism. All of you need to be the same. All of you need to follow these certain principles. All of you need to follow these certain beliefs. And that's what happens when societies get really, really big and you need to control people. You need to control the narrative, therefore authoritarianism. So in our own lives, I would like to see a lot less authoritarian tolerated here. How can we go around lecturing other people when we tolerate authoritarianism? And this happens on different scales all over. I don't know. I'm at a complete loss to know what to do about this situation.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure.
Sort of Xinjiang cotton is used in Adidas, Puma, and Hugo Boss products. And we an awful lot of our medical things come from Xinjiang. If I haven't got that pronunciation, I get it wrong. I mean, is the answer economic and to exercise our power of purchase?
Well, we're so tied up though that this is the problem. Like, if as individuals we start to boycott China, which is, it's an option. Some people could do that. What we're going to do? What are people going to give up? What are people realistically going to give up? People are going to give up shoes. People, and you would go back and you would find all sorts of companies using that. It wouldn't just be those companies. There'll be cheaper companies as well. People have to wear clothes. People have to have shoes and things like that. I think putting this on an individual is really, really hard. Really hard for individuals to do anything. And of course, when people try to boycott and divest and so on, often you're accused of all sorts of different things, like people are accused in the boycott divest with regards to Palestine and stuff like that. I think people are accused of all sorts of things there. So I don't know. I wouldn't put this on individuals at all.
Thank you, Paul. I'm so sorry to cut you off there. God bless you for all you're saying. Finally, last question to Jane. People are worried that this is the start of a new Cold War with China, and that sort of we're descending in that what Paul was talking about and Laura, this clash of cultures, and sort of the confrontations that are happening over it are taking us towards a new Cold War. I mean, do you fear that the consequences of falling out with China about it? Or do you think it's worth falling out with China about it?
I think we do need to take a stand against acts of inhumanity. That's a complex issue because obviously countries who are considered to be our close allies like America commit abuses against humanity. The world seems to be, the Western world seems to be more focused on Russia right now. So I think I'm probably more worried about the situation between America and Russia. But it does feel like these big Western powers, and probably very much the same, in countries like China and Russia, they need a big foreign enemy for the people to be worrying about so that they can make people stop thinking too much about domestic issues. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was a focus of governments.
Thank you very much indeed. Perfect timing, Jane. It's just exactly 10 o'clock. Some lovely comments on this. Leanne Powell says it's been happening for years in Tibet. We've known about these concentration camps, and now there's proof there has to be action taken. And then she gets a focus change, and she says, "Oh, excited little puppy," and and the world comes back to reality. Thank you, everybody, for your lovely comments. Thank you, team, for your fantastic comments. And you leave me in awe of you, as always. I'm going to pass over to Paul, who will do the end of show spiel. But it just remains me to say thank you, Laura. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Can I make one thing clear quickly? Just, I don't know if it was a joke or not. Paul's not my dad, he's my husband. And yes, we do have an exciting puppy, and I've been trying really hard to keep her quiet, but she's not having it.
No.
Penny's
It's
here.
sort of you got so yeah, it's your fault. Jane, thank you so much indeed for all your comments and for your high moral stance. We value what you have to say. It's so important to us for the show. And Paul, the boss, God bless you and take us away. Thank you.
Okay, so do us a favour and like Socialist Think Tank on all social media platforms. Join us on Socialist Think Tank. You can become a member. You can donate to us if you like as well. That really, really helps us. But please feel free to join anyway. We really do appreciate everything that you do. Do spread the word, share our stuff, that kind of thing, because we are fighting against big evil algorithms that want money behind them. So try and help us as best you can. We really appreciate it. We want to spread the message of socialism far and wide and let people know that it's just a bunch of nice people saying nice things, not authoritarian weirdos doing awful things like we've talked about tonight. So hopefully everyone has a lovely night. It's been lovely to see you all. And if you're listening on the podcast as well, big shout out to you too. Bye-bye, everyone.
Keep the red flag flying here.